The National Weather Service has issued a gale warning. So, what is gale force winds? Now, this is an example. So, let's say the National Weather Service has issued a gale warning. So, when they say a gale warning has issued in your area, what they mean is that there's a flag warning, a red flag warning. And basically, a red flag warning is where you get wind speeds of heat that could cause fire flames that could go around 30,000 kilometers high. That's a red flag warning. Now, a gale force wind is a collision of strong upper level jet streams of strong winds that come around over 58 to 64 miles per hour or even more. There are different types of gale winds according to the seismograph of the determination in the gram of the winds. You have a fresh gale. A fresh gale brings winds over 35 to 45 miles per hour. You have a minor gale. A minor gale is basically the starting of the gale winds that go over 35 to 40 miles per hour. You have a moderated gale that goes winds from 45 miles per hour to 48 or even to 50 miles per hour. A strong gale is winds that are over 54 miles per hour going up extraordinary to 60 miles per hour. And a storm gale wind is basically abnormal high pressure or a low pressure that comes in your area. And you have strong winds that are gusting around, which could form what is called a red flag warning, as I really explain what a red flag warning is. Gale winds usually happens when in the stratosphere you have a jet stream that goes around 1,000 miles fast. That's how the form of gale winds are supposed to be. So you have gale winds that are going 1,000 miles fast, like whipping around. And what happens is the sun's heat from the collision could go up to 10,000 degrees. And when it goes to 10,000 degrees, you get strong upper level winds that could go over 65 miles per hour on the stratosphere. And what happens is we sometimes get these strong force of winds that breaks down from the stratosphere, and it goes straight into the tropopause, and then it goes to the troposphere, and then it dips down to the ground, what we call gusty winds. If it goes to the ground and it whips in the ground, we call that gusty winds. Gusty winds are basically winds that come from the ground and is basically pushing with amount of pressure and strong force. And technically, we can have winds that could go hurricane force wind gusts. That is part of a gale marine forecast. Now, there's different kinds of arguments about what side of the services. There's two services. You got the Hurricane National Weather Service and you got the regular National Weather Service, which basically talks about the forecast. And the National Weather Service assumes that gale winds could go only about 62 to 64 knots. Now, the National Weather Hurricane Service submits that gale force winds could be over 70 to 76 miles per hour, which are tropical storm force wind gusts. And tropical storm force wind gusts are basically a feel like it's like a tropical storm, but it's not really a tropical storm. It's basically a depression storm that brings strong winds. What is a depression storm? A depression storm is basically a swirling storm that forms into a cyclonic storm, like storms from Winter Storm Pax, also Tropical Storm Peachy that hit in the area since long time in the Bronx. Those are cyclonic storms that brought force wind gusts, including Tropical Storm Chalker that hit in the last commitment years, during we had frigid cold temperatures. Gale winds could participate in any kind of format. They could participate in a polar vortex, like Super Kofar Nolan. We had gale force winds that are over 67 miles per hour. And that's really bad because wind chills could participate with the academy to the gale winds. And gale winds, the gale winds meters are approximately about 82 meters. Like 82 meters approximately for a strong gusty forecast winds. You had to have at least a balloon meter wind that could measure the air mass. So I want to show you a little diagram that I made in my weather lesson. So you have to have the sun that's about 10,000 degrees. A lot of collision starts in the stratosphere. And the sun's temperature, like I said, 10,000 degrees. So remember, listen to that, 10,000 degrees, collision. Now we have ozone layers. What are ozone layers? They protect us from the sunburns. Without the ozone layers, we will be dead. D-I, no, not D-I. D-E-A-D, dead. And the reasoning why is because the sun is so intensely hot. It can bring strong heat across a radius from 8 miles away from the earth. It's a very intense star of strong heat. And the ozone layers protects it. And what happens is the collision and pressure starts to form, and it starts to make a little big dip to the stratosphere, and it goes down to the troposphere, and then gale wind starts to form. That happens basically on depending how strong the jet stream is. If you're in the vortex of the jet stream, you will have a gale wind. Now, people want to know what's the difference between a small craft and a gale wind. A small craft is winds that basically starts on the coast. So if you're planning on going on a boat and the National Weather Service issued a small craft advisory, that means they're telling you to watch out for high surf. Basically like high surf of feet of water that could go over 4 feet. Now gale winds are stronger than small craft winds. These typical definitions come from mariners, and mariners are basically academers who basically have good techniques of definition. Since 1983, Robert Williams made a definition to what is a gale wind and a small craft wind. He basically measured temperatures, and especially James Dobson. He was a very, very famous guy who measured about gale force winds and small craft winds. It basically has something to do with the involvement of the sun's heat and pressure and collision that dips into the stratosphere, causing strong force of gust. And basically what happens is when you have a strong force of gust, all that wind pushes down about 8 kilometers high. So that means that you could be expected to get strong gusting winds. What are the damage for strong gusting winds? Well, you had to have at least 65 to 70 mile per hour wind gusts, or 54. That could bring minor damage, power lines down, and sometimes could bring intense damage. Like Winter Storm Jonas. When Winter Storm Jonas hit in our area since January 23rd, 2016, there was a considerable, just outbreaking record than Hurricane Sandy that hit in 2012. Intense flooding. The flooding from New Jersey was on the coastal areas from New Jersey was bad because of the gale force winds that was pushing towards the water, the sea, that rises over about 4 feet to about 8 feet high. And that brings a lot of moderate to major flooding. It was one of the most highest breaking record than Hurricane Sandy. So think about watch that video about the previous ones when I talked about Winter Storm Jonas. Check that out. The strongest gale winds in order to have the strongest gale winds, if you want a strong gale wind to happen, you have to at least be in the vortex of the jet stream. And what I mean by the vortex of the jet stream is that you have to be in there so you can find the collision. So you have to find, scientists have to find the center of the vortex of collision air mass, where it's located, so they can find where we could get the gale winds. So that is basically what are gale force winds. They're very strong gusty winds. Hope you guys like the video, and leave a comment below, and make sure if you want to make a story if you ever expected gale winds. And I could even make a comment, and I'll subscribe to your channel. Peace out.